Blood sausage. One crisp fall day, my stepfather Hank and Rancid Crabtree butchered one of our hogs. In those days, slaughtering and butchering were skills considered essential to survival on a small farm, and for that flimsy reason I had been ordered to participate in the ceremonies. It was common knowledge among my family and friends that I had a weak stomach, a stomach that would do backflips at the mere thought of butchering, let alone actually rummaging around inside a dead hog. On those grounds, I appealed to my kindly old grandmother to be excused from the nasty task. "Stop that whining and belly-aching," Gram responded kindly. "Now get on out there and help with that butchering." "No, it'll make me deathly ill, I tell you. You can't force me to do this. Look, I'm already gagging. You'll never forgive yourself if you make me do this, and I gag to death." "Try me. Listen, you keep begging your ma and me to let you go hunting by yourself, right? So, assuming we were crazy enough to let a 12-year-old young'un without a bit of sense in his head wander off into the woods with a loaded rifle, and assuming this young'un actually shot a deer, how is this young'un planning on dressing out this deer? Bring it home for his poor old granny to perform the chore?" Yeah, that was my plan. Why do you ask? You thinking about letting me go deer hunting?" I always figured the reason God invented skin was so people like me wouldn't have to look at innards. Even though I carefully explained this theological concept to Gram, I was forcefully propelled out to the killing ground behind the barn to help with the butchering. My dog, Strange, already in cheerful attendance, danced about, shouting his approval and applauding each grisly detail. There were few things Strange enjoyed more than a good butchering. He was the sort of dog that could be found munching popcorn in the front row at a public hanging. For me, the butchering was just as awful as I had expected. Hank and Rancid didn't help much either. Hank, a Frenchman, loved cooking exotic dishes, some of which you could actually stand to eat with your eyes open, as long as you didn't know the ingredients. Rancid, on the other hand, had the culinary aptitude of a coyote, and the table manners too, come to think of it. "Look here, Pat," Hank said. "A lot of folks don't think this thing right here is good to eat." I said. "A lot of folks are right, too." "Rancid, you eat this, don't you?" Hank said. "Sure, Hank, and it's right tasty, too, fried up with a little garlic and bar grease." "Now you take these little morsels here. They're dang good eatin'," Hank said. I said. "You're lying, Hank. You just say that to be disgusting and try to make me sick." "No, I ain't. You like these little morsels, don't you, Rancid?" "Sure. They's mighty fine eatin', fried up with a little garlic and bar grease." "You guys are pulling my leg," I said. "You're trying to make me sicker to my stomach than I already am. I suppose next thing you're going to tell me is that you saved that dishpan full of blood over there because it's good to eat." I was wondering about that myself, Hank," Rancid said. "How come you saved all that blood?" "To make blood sausage with, of course," Hank replied. "Nothing like fried blood sausage with gross crepe on a cold winter morning. Makes my mouth water just thinking about it." To the best of my recollection, that was the first and only time I ever saw Rancid gag. Even Strange looked a little queasy. Blood sausage? Surely, I thought, Hank jests. But no, he fully intended to make blood sausage. Scarcely was the butchering finished, then all members of the family were enlisted in the gory undertaking. I tried to make a break for it, but Gram snared me by an ear and dragged me back. My assignment was to stir the blood in a big pot on the stove. "They must have laws against forcing a kid to stir blood," I said. "You probably could be arrested for this." "You ain't no better than the rest of us," Gram growled. "Now shut up and stir that blood." "I'll get you for this, Gram," I threatened. "You just wait and see if I don't." "You and who else?" Gram said with a chuckle, good-naturedly tweaking my ear into a figure 8. Gram was one of the fastest ear tweakers in the West, and not easily intimidated. "Now," she growled, "stir that pot of blood." "Like Hank told you to." I replied, and started stirring the blood. Clearly, if I didn't assert myself in some way, Gram would continue to dominate me. I needed to show her that I couldn't be pushed around without retaliating. But what was her weak spot? Maybe Gilbert. Gilbert had been my grandmother's boyfriend for several years. He was a tall, thin man, almost as shy as he was bald. He had an important and highly technical job in town, single-handedly operating the film projector at the Pandora, our only movie theater. I thought it had to be about the best job in the world, being a master movie projectionist. First of all, you got to see all the movies free, and each one over and over. And then there was all the excitement and danger Gilbert told us about. Sometimes the film would break right at the climax of a movie, and Gilbert would have to calmly splice the film while the audience booed and hissed, and some of the rowdier loggers threatened to integrate the faulty projector with the brave projectionist. "It takes nerves of steel," Gilbert told us one evening at dinner. "Fascinating," Hank said. "Please pass the gravy." "By the way, Hank, this dish is absolutely delicious," Gilbert said. "I've never tasted anything quite like it. What are these scrumptious little morsels?" "Hog lips," I said. "Care for another helping, Gil?" Gilbert's fork froze halfway to his mouth, but then Gram explained that I had just been joshing, and as soon as she laid hands on me, my ears would be tweaked so hard I could use them for eye shades. Had I been so uncouth as to mention some of the actual ingredients in Hank's creation, Gilbert's entire body would have seized up right there at the dinner table. We would have had to carry him home in his chair, the fork still frozen halfway to his mouth. Stirring the pot of blood on the stove, I recalled Gilbert's reaction to my little joke that evening. No doubt about it, Gilbert was the soft underbelly of my grandmother's defenses. That was where I would strike, should the opportunity present itself. As it happened, the opportunity presented itself much sooner than I expected. Each member of the family had been assigned a task in the making of the blood sausage. Gram worked grimly at the kitchen table with a big butcher knife, chopping up garlic and onions and other ingredients. My sister Troll measured out the choppings and hauled them over to dump them in the cauldron that I stirred. Mom waited to begin her work of assisting in filling the sausage casings. Hank, as master chef, directed the whole operation. Everything went smoothly, or as smoothly as the making of blood sausage can go. In the next to final step, Mom stood on one chair holding an empty sausage casing that dangled almost to the floor, and Hank stood on another chair, filling the casing with the loathsome concoction. The casing was tied off in sections to make links, which were then boiled. The boiled links actually looked pretty good, although no one present, except Hank, had any intention whatsoever of even sampling the blood sausage in his or her lifetime. Perhaps, I thought, I could get Gilbert to eat one of these sausages. Then I would tell him the major ingredient. I could say the whole thing was Gram's idea. When we were almost finished, Gram, Troll, and I glumly watched Mom and Hank up on their chairs filling the final 6-foot sausage casing. As the dark, disgusting liquid rose higher and higher, the casing bulged and glistened grotesquely. Then disaster struck. The casing burst. Kabloosh! Blood flew in all directions, splashing to the floor and sweeping back and forth in ever-diminishing tidal waves. Soaked head to foot with blood, we stared at each other in stunned silence. Gram's face contorted with fury. She shook the big butcher knife at Hank and snarled, "Just look at the mess you've made of my kitchen. I knew something like this would happen." Then came the sound of the back door opening and closing, and timid footsteps crossing the utility room to the kitchen. "Hello?" Gilbert called out. "Anybody home?" He stepped into the kitchen, carrying a bouquet of wildflowers in a little vase. "My goodness, what on earth is that?" We were naturally all embarrassed to be caught in such a mess. It is very difficult to explain to a visitor how your kitchen and yourselves came to be covered with blood. Suddenly, I realized fate had thrust upon me the opportunity of a lifetime. "Run for your life, Gil," I yelled, pointing at Graham. "She's got a knife!" The vase of wildflowers smashed to the floor. Ashen-faced, mouth agape, Gilbert backed away on rubbery legs. "Wait, Gilbert!" Graham cried out. "Don't go!" She rushed toward him, reaching out to grab the hands he was weakly slapping at her. I suspect Graham's approach might have had a greater calming effect if she hadn't still been holding the big butcher knife. We were all pretty startled by Gilbert's reaction. Finally, Hank, who had a great sense of humor, broke out in a chuckle. "Well," he said, "there goes old Nerves of Steel." Even Graham had to laugh, although not until the following week. Troll said, "Wow, did you see that? Wow!" Mom said, "But what about my screen door?" Hank said, "Oh, don't worry about that. Gil probably dropped it in the driveway." Graham later tracked Gilbert down and explained the situation to him, that we'd been canning raspberries and a jar had burst. Gil said he knew it was a joke right from the beginning and had gone along with it just for the fun. He said he liked to play the clown on occasion. Sorry about the screen door. A few nights afterward, he was at our house for dinner. "What's wrong with your ear, Pat?" he asked me. "Oh, it's just recovering from a bad tweaking," I said. "Nothing serious. When it grows back on, it'll be good as new." "Have another sausage, Gil," Hank said. "Made it myself." "Don't mind if I do," Gilbert said. "It's delicious. Can I get the recipe?" "You bet," I said. A tweaking should not go unavenged.